Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guest today is Dr. Rick Dina, and he knows a lot about a lot. I love having him on the show because he really is the science guy when it comes to nutrition, especially raw food nutrition. And he's going to be talking today about how vegetables rule. He also is a contributor to the ultimate vegan health and weight loss bundle. I'm sure he's going to tell you what his offering is in just a moment. And his link to buy from him is right below this video and in the chat. Please welcome Dr. Rick Dina. It's so good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. It's been too long. Well, Chef AJ, it's always a pleasure to join you and your audience. I'm honored and excited about being here today.
Yep. Apple said, hurrah, Dr. Dina. Did you know there's two Dr. Dinas, guys? We got one of them today.
Yep. Dr. Karin is busy working on things as well. But I'm representing both of us today.
That's great. So tell us what you have in the bundle.
Oh, so we have a supercharged recipe guide with a whole bunch of dressings and different things in there, raw oriented, that are sort of tried and true things for us, that are staples for us, that we've used over the years, that taste great and have excellent nutritional value, so you can be as healthy as possible. And both of those things are always prerequisites for things that we like to eat and share with people. It's got to be good for you, and you have to really enjoy it.
Nice. Hey, I know you recently had a baby, didn't you?
Yeah, he's 1.5 years old now.
Wow. So I'm just curious because I don't know if I may ask how you feed him, but can a person have a raw baby?
Well, he's not raw. He eats a lot of raw food. I mean, his breast milk was raw, although he's done with that stage now. He kind of weaned himself a little earlier than we would have liked, but he had a lot of that. He eats, we feed him a lot of the same stuff we do. He has fruit and green smoothies. And vegetable wise, the other day I was feeding him and I was eating some lettuce and he wanted some and I let him eat it, and he's got teeth, but then those kind of came up. So we're like, all right, I don't think he's ready for raw veggies yet, but we feed him steamed. We make a soup of steamed zucchini and kale. And we put some either lentils or chickpeas in there. And then we put some chia and walnut in there to get some good fats in him. And so a good chunk of his diet is raw, and it's all veggie. And he's doing great. He's thriving. He's healthy. He's happy. He runs around the house like crazy, and he keeps us busy, but he's incredible.
That's so cool. I love it. He's got a cool name too. I love his name. You don't hear it very often.
Oh, Liam?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's getting more popular. It's actually named after Dr. Karen's dad, William, but then like Liam's the hip, cool name these days. So
it really is.
We'll go with that.
I think of the action star Liam Neeson.
It definitely, yeah. When he gets old enough, we'll be like, look, that guy has your name. He's a cool dude. He's the Star Wars guy and all sorts of other good stuff.
Yeah, it is a cool name. That's great. So have you had a chance to look at the bundle and notice there's a lot of raw people in it this time, not just Lissa and Nate, but lots of wonderful people, Chris Kendall and many people, Raw Chef Yin. They have a lot of raw offerings.
Haven't looked through all of it, but I saw you have, I looked at who you had. It was just so many people, and there must be thousands of recipes in there.
Over 2,000 recipes,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And Dr. Karin and I were having a debate when we sent our email out. I said it should say you get all this for the ridiculous price of $49. And she said, no, don't use the word ridiculous. That has negative connotations. So she said the truly incredible price of $49.
Incredible. That's right. The incredible low price. Yeah.
Now, so yeah, we saw that. It looks just phenomenal. I mean, really, it is ridiculous. It is incredible. It should be, people always put that this is worth $1 million and you get it for a penny. This isn't exaggerated. I mean, this thing ought to be worth $500, $600, $800.
Well, that's right. And there is about almost $6,500 worth of content if you add it all up, if we had to buy each thing separately.
Yeah, no, phenomenal. And we're honored to be a little slice of that. So thank you so much for including us.
Well, thank you for coming. So what are you going to talk about today?
So today, like you said, vegetables rule. I remember Chef AJ a few years ago on one of our summits where we had you as a guest, which we've had many times. Always happy to have you. At the end, after you spoke, I said, okay, so what are some of the key take homes here? And one of the things you said, and I quote you often on this, was learn to love vegetables. They're so important to be the foundation of your diet for so many reasons. And I've got a few dietary comparisons with fewer vegetables and more vegetables to share with you today that will help illustrate that point very clearly.
Yep, that's great. Can't wait to see it.
All right, so let me get my screen shared here. And can everyone see that here? Vegetables rule.
I love
Me
it.
on the left, Dr. Karin on the upper right. So let's take a look. All right, let's see. Let me make sure I'm in the right place. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to start out with an original diet, a really good, healthy diet where people can lose weight, reverse type 2 diabetes, reverse autoimmune disease, lower their blood pressure, lower their cholesterol, get way healthier. I'm not here to criticize this diet at all. It's a fantastic diet. So this diet is basically oatmeal with apples, raisins, cinnamon, a little bit of flax meal in there for breakfast. It's some vegan burritos, sprouted grain tortillas with some rice, beans, avocado, tomato, and zucchini for lunch. And then dinner's really simple: a couple cups of cooked broccoli, and 1 cup of quinoa, 1 cup of chickpeas. So now I'm going to compare that to a different diet. For breakfast, we're not just adding vegetables, although we have some kale there, but we're adding fruit. So I'm just having a totally different breakfast, a green smoothie instead of oatmeal. Lunch is really similar. The brown rice, black beans, avocado, tomato, and zucchini are all the same, except it's 4 tomatoes instead of 2. But instead of the tortillas, I've got a half a head of lettuce there, and we are adding a cup of steamed kale, a cup of steamed carrots, and 1.5 cups of cooked cauliflower. So we've taken away the tortillas and we've added lettuce and steamed vegetables. And then for dinner, we are adding a big salad and a dressing made out of lemon juice, celery, onion, and some chia and some walnut. And if any of you were watching the recording and you want to see the two diets head to head on the same page, you can hit pause here, and there is the dinner. So basically, I have changed the diet by taking away some starches, not eliminating them, just taking them away, de-emphasizing them, and I've added some fruit for the smoothie, and I've added quite a bit of vegetables at lunch and dinner. So let's see how we did with the comparisons here. Macronutrient profile, nearly identical. I designed them to be nearly identical, so we're comparing apples to apples here. But you noticed in the second diet where I added a lot of vegetables, there's a lot more food there. There could be about probably about a 50% increase in food volume. Means your stomach is more full for more of the day that way, yet the calories have gone down by about 100. And Chef AJ, I know she makes this point all the time. Isn't this great? You can eat more and get more full with fewer calories. In fact, you have to eat a lot. And if you told most people out there struggling, trying to lose weight, here's the deal. It's actually going to be a challenge to eat enough food to get enough calories. You're going to feel so full all the time and still reduce your calorie intake. That's going to be the big challenge. They'd say, sign me up. That sounds like a great challenge instead of the little muffins and the little chicken thing and the portion control. You got to eat a lot of food. So in any case, we increased our food volume and decreased our calorie intake. So starch-centered diet on the left here, and the fruit and vegetable, more vegetables on the right, both really low in saturated fat. That's great. Both don't have any cholesterol. All those vegetables are very fiber rich. So we went from 73 grams of fiber, which is great, to 90 grams of fiber, which really is phenomenal. Look at this beta carotene difference here. We went from 5,500 to over 100,000 1,000 in beta carotene. And yes, I added some carrots, but let's just take a look here. Most of the beta carotene increase came from the lettuce. Okay, and some did come from the carrots as well, but a lot came from the other vegetables and fruit. But just by adding the lettuce there, we've dramatically increased our beta carotene level. How about vitamin C? We've about tripled our vitamin C. That's fantastic. Adding some was from the fruit, and a lot of that is from the vegetables. Here's a quote from one of my absolute heroes, probably the top #1 hero, mentor in my nutritional life, Dr. T. Colin Campbell. He said, plasma antioxidant levels, especially vitamin C and beta carotene, are inversely associated with several cancers. So we increased our beta carotene about 20-fold. We increased our vitamin C about 3-fold. Okay, let's take a look at vitamin E. We almost doubled the vitamin E content. Vitamin K, that's about 5 times more. A lot to be said about that, but we're just going to keep moving here. We increased folate quite a bit. We a little bit more than doubled folate. Now we have more omega-3s here. And yes, there were some chia seeds and walnuts in the dressing for dinner with the fruit and veggie diet. We did have some flax in the oatmeal for the original diet. But let's take a look here. If I were not to include that flaxseed in the original diet, okay, if we see the total omega-3 is 1.7, and if we take away 0.9, we are below the recommendations for omega-3s of 1.1 grams for women and 1.6 grams for men. So we didn't have enough vegetables. Therefore, without that flax meal and the oatmeal, we did not make it for omega-3 recommendations. Now let's take a look where we added our fruits and vegetables and some chia and walnut. But let's take the chia and walnut away here for a moment. We got 5.3 grams total, and 2.8 came from the chia and the walnut. So let me just do the math really quick. That's 2.5 grams of omega-3s left. And if you look at that, the lettuce in this diet had 0.7, the kale had 0.4, cauliflower contributed a little bit, zucchini, broccoli contributed a little bit. So if you're like Chef AJ, for example, and you don't like adding lots of fat to your diet, maybe just a little bit of chia seed here and there to thicken up a dressing or something like that, you can cover your omega-3 needs without adding extra fat sources if you've got enough vegetables, especially enough leafy green vegetables in your diet. And in fact, I love that I'm giving this presentation here on the Chef AJ show. Chef AJ is a great example of a few years ago, I think it was, Chef AJ, when you had me as a guest on one of your summits, we actually took a look at your fatty acid profile. And, you know, it's one of the topics I'm really enthused about. And we analyzed it, and we saw that you were in excellent omega-3 status. And it's not just because you can ignore those other omega-3 sources, but if you get enough vegetables in, especially the leafy greens, they're excellent sources of omega-3s. In fact, they are my top favorite sources of omega-3 fats. So here is a perfect example. Omega-6s, we did have a bit more omega-6s in the second diet, even though the total fat content was the same. We have more of both of the essential fats. And then the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio was excellent in the original diet, but some could argue even better in the diet with more vegetables. How about calcium? Take a look at that. We more than doubled our calcium by adding those vegetables, including the leafy greens. We increased magnesium a little bit. Little bit more sodium, but quite a bit more potassium. And we actually had a better sodium potassium ratio. And with all of these things, we could discuss the nutrients for several more minutes. So again, I'm just going through quickly here. A little bit more iron, which was good, although both of those diets are solid for iron. And zinc was about the same. So basically what we saw here is more food volume, fewer calories, more fiber, and a pretty dramatic increase in nutrient density by adding more vegetables to our diet. And there we just kind of summarized the differences for all of the nutrients. Now, I don't just want to pick on starches. We're going to take a look at fruit versus vegetables here in this quick part too. So we've got a fruit-only diet where somebody had watermelon for breakfast, they had mangoes for lunch, and they had 8 bananas for dinner. Super simple. So I've got 2 other comparisons here. This fruit and lettuce diet, everything's the same, except I took 0.8 bananas away because that was the same amount of calories as a really large head of romaine lettuce. So we're going to see what happens nutritionally just from that substitution, but the same amount of calories. And then I've got more of a fruit and vegetable diet. We have the same watermelon for breakfast, the same mangoes for lunch. We've got 4 bananas now instead of 8, but calorie-wise, in place of that, we added some romaine lettuce, some tomato, zucchini, cauliflower, and then we made a dressing out of, and celery, and then we made a dressing out of avocado and lemon juice. Okay, so we've got 3 different diets: fruit only, fruit plus lettuce, and fruit and vegetables. And macronutrient profile is pretty similar, a little more fat because we had avocado here, but I designed these to be virtually identical in calories. Saturated fat is low in all of them. There is no cholesterol. Dietary fiber kind of makes sense. It goes up as we add more vegetables. Per calorie, vegetables are the richest source of dietary fiber of all food categories. How about beta carotene? We didn't add carrots or anything like that. There is some beta carotene in the mango, for example, with the fruit, but we had a pretty dramatic increase. And the difference between these two is only lettuce. So like we saw before, even though lettuce is green and it's not orange, it's a super fantastic source of beta carotene. Vitamin C, fruit's really good for vitamin C, but so we didn't get much more vitamin C from the lettuce, but we did get it here by adding some more vegetables. So that's a nice improvement. Vitamin E is about the same. Vitamin E tends to be in higher fat foods, so we got a little from the avocado here, but that's pretty good for all of them. Vitamin K, pretty unique to leafy greens, so we had a nice increase there. Folate, also leafy greens are an excellent source of that, so we went up in greens. Omega-3s, we didn't quite make it here. We didn't get to 1.1 for women or 1.6 for men. We got a nice improvement with the lettuce, and we made it for everybody by adding more vegetables there also. And by the way, this didn't come from the avocado. This was from the additional vegetables. Omega-6s, that's good for everything. 6-to-3 ratio. These are all really good. How'd we do for calcium? Now look, this just doesn't cut it. 238 fruitarians out there, that's not good for their bones and teeth. We got a nice bump with adding the lettuce, and we're just about to a pretty good level by adding more vegetables, but we can see more vegetables, more calcium. Magnesium is about the same on all of these. Sodium is very low for all of them. They call vegetables, vegetable dishes tend to be called savory, and fruit dishes tend to be called sweet. Some of the savoriness is because we've got some extra sodium in there. That's not nearly too much. That's still really good, but you got a little extra savoriness from the vegetables. But you've got even more potassium. Sodium potassium ratio is even better with the vegetables there. So again, a lot more about that we could talk about. Iron, got a nice increase in iron from adding the vegetables. We got a nice increase in zinc from adding the vegetables. And basically, I'm going to stop sharing the screen here. So just nutrient after nutrient, we can see that as we added more vegetables to either a starch-centered diet or a fruit-centered diet, we got a really excellent improvement in nutrient density for a lot of key nutrients. And we got more fiber, and we got to eat more food without too many calories. And they're just I just can't emphasize enough. And I know I went through that really quickly. I could have spent more time on each nutrient talking about the importance of it. But it's just so clear that vegetables they really need to be there as if not the staple of your diet, no matter how you slice it in the plant-based or even in the non-plant-based world. They are just extraordinarily beneficial, and you don't want to do without them. So that's kind of the bottom line.
Yes, and I agree with you, Dr. Dina, but it seems to be the hardest food group to get people to eat of all ages.
It's true. But here's the good news. We're talking about your bundle of those, what was it, 2,000 or so recipes?
Yeah. All of mine are vegetables. My course is 56 recipes, a 66-page ebook called Fall in Love with Vegetables. It was all about vegetables this year.
Beautiful. So you're covered fully there. And my guess is, out of the rest of the 1,940 something other recipes in the bundle, that there's a good chunk of vegetable based recipes in there that you all can take advantage of. So yes, it's challenging, but there's great resources out there, and we're probably talking about one of the best vegetable resources ever as part of this bundle.
Yeah. Why do you think it's so hard to get people to eat vegetables? I mean, if they were raised like your son eating them, or Gar Goldhammer, they don't have a problem. Dr. Goldhammer told Gar that if he was a good boy, he'd get Brussels sprouts and guess what his favorite food is. I mean, it just seems like people don't fall in love with vegetables unless they have to.
Yeah. So a couple thoughts. So yeah, you brought up our little guy who's about 1.5 years now. We are so psyched when we blend up that soup and he's eating kale, and he's getting kale and dandelion greens in his smoothie. And we know Dr. Karin was eating a ton of that stuff when she was pregnant with him. I mean, he's never had salt. He's getting acclimated to that as a young kid. So, you've had Dr. Lyle and Dr. Goldhammer on your show many times. They wrote the book, The Pleasure Trap. They're the masters of that realm. And they talk about how we are naturally attracted to things that are calorie dense. And if vegetables tasted better to us than peaches and starches, our ancestors would have just eaten vegetables. They would have been super nutrient dense, but they wouldn't have gotten enough calories. They wouldn't have survived long enough to reproduce, wouldn't have worked. So in a natural setting, potatoes, ooh, that tastes better than the lettuce. Ooh, those peaches, oh, they're ripe now. That's even better. Oh my God, we got some avocados. Oh my God, there was a burnt deer there that got caught in the forest fire. Ooh, that's really tasty. I mean, it's those instincts served us really well in a natural environment, because the most calorie dense things out there were some nuts in the fall, but they were hard to open up in the shells. Some avocado at certain times of the year, the burnt deer you might find occasionally. We had a built-in control mechanism. Today, with processed foods and and everything, where manufacturers super concentrate everything, we like those things, but then we get a drug-like relationship with them, and so it's tough to get away. But the really good news is, when we start getting rid of the junk, and we're a little bit patient, we give ourselves a few weeks or a few months or so for our taste buds to reacclimate, things like vegetables actually start to taste really good again, which is fantastic. So you got to give yourself the opportunity for that to happen. And if you want to accelerate the process a little bit, either a juice fast or a short water fast can actually reset your taste buds more quickly. So you come out of, I'll never forget the first meal I ate when I was a teenager. I was 20 years old. I was living in my college dorm. I fasted for 14 days, not the way I'd recommend anybody do it, but 14 days on just water. I will never forget the 3 slices of cantaloupe that I ate to break that fast. There was a new dimension of flavor I never knew existed in there. So the point is, when we get rid of the overstimulating food and or accelerate the process with the juice fast or water fast, we reset our taste buds, and those foods taste really good to us again.
Absolutely.
So that's the good news.
Yeah. Well, like this expression, hunger is the best sauce. People criticize me for suggesting people eat vegetables for breakfast. But if I don't eat them first, I'm not going to go, eat my Hannah yam, which is like delicious. And then like, oh yeah, well, I think I'm going to have some vegetables now. No, you eat them first, because then when you're hungry, your taste buds are heightened, and I think they taste better first, because that's when I'm
They
hungry.
do. Yep. The principle of sequencing there, that's extremely valuable. And that's exactly what we recommend too. You start with the salad, then you have the denser things.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Why are desserts always so concentrated?
I know.
Because you need more flavor hit once you're already full.
Oh, absolutely. I had it all backwards when I was obese. I was like, my philosophy then was life is uncertain, eat dessert first. But that is the exact opposite of what you should do if you're trying to lose weight and be healthy. So Apple, who's watching live, says she would love to hear about your online educational program and your raw school.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you. That's a great question. What we love talking about. So Dr. Karin and I have been on this path a long time, 30 plus years each. Back in 2006, we started putting together a plant-based curriculum based on fruits and vegetables. It's evolved over time. And what we have now is we have a 12-month program called Mastering Raw Food Nutrition that we offer online. And it starts at the end of August, early September each year, and goes through the end of the next August. And people who are really, really enthused about learning about whole food, plant-based nutrition with an emphasis on fresh fruits and vegetables take our course, and they learn an enormous amount, and it gives them confidence in what they are doing. Most people find that their diets improve dramatically during the course because they learn all this good stuff. It's hard not to be inspired. And they tend to keep it up over the long term, because when all the new this trending and that trending, and it used to be, paleo was big, but then it's keto, and now carnivore, and, whatever else might be trending, it's so much less likely they're going to be knocked off track because they are so well educated and they can kind of head those things off at the pass. So it's really, we love teaching it. It's a significant commitment. It's a whole year. We recommend people spend about 4 hours per week with the program. So it's a couple hundred hours. It's a few $1,000s. It's a significant time and financial investment. But for those really excited who take it, we have overwhelmingly positive reviews, and people talk about how it transforms their lives and all that kind of stuff. And several people who we talked to said they originally saw me or Dr. Karin on the Chef AJ show.
Whoa,
And we're very well aligned in our messages.
I love that. That I'm like a conduit for good.
Yes.
Here's a question from a live viewer. I heard K1 converts to K2, but I heard we really need K2 as well. It's really hard to get if you don't eat soy. I'm allergic to soy, and I don't know. I've never had I don't even know what K2 is, and how you check it. So talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so there's advantages and disadvantages of Dr. Karin and I working together. One of the disadvantages, we both know things, but we don't each know each other's things quite as well. So she's more the vitamin K2 authority. But here's the basic gist. Microbiome research is exploding, and we're learning more all the time. And what it looks like pretty solid in the scientific literature thus far, but this is still an evolving area of research. We saw a lot of vitamin K in the vegetables, a significant increase in vitamin K levels from both of those comparisons we did with vegetables. That's vitamin K1. What it looks like occurs is that when we have a healthy microbiome, which we tend to get by eating a lot of fiber from whole natural plant foods, much of that fiber is known as prebiotic fiber, means it feeds the good bacteria in our intestines, collectively known as our microbiome. So when we have a healthy microbiome, it appears, we think, looks pretty solid, but again, not totally conclusive here. It looks like they convert vitamin K1 into vitamin K2. So we should be pretty solid on plant-based diets with plenty of greens for vitamin K2. I don't know if there's actually a vitamin K2 test out there yet, which makes it more challenging to verify. So that's the basic rundown. But if you go to our website, rawfoodeducation.com, and you go to the Mastering Raw Food Nutrition tab, there's 10 or 12 recordings of webinars that we do a few webinars each summer. And for each of those, there's information about Dr. Karin and I at the beginning. There's information about our course at the end, but then in the middle, there's sample nutritional content. So for example, in the June 22 webinar, you can watch the expanded version of the presentation that I shared here today. And there are some others, if you scroll around, I'd have to go find which one, but there are some others where Dr. Karin goes into the K2 story in more depth. So if you scroll around a little bit, you can find more information there.
Thank you. And here is another question from a live viewer. Would cooked lettuce still be beneficial nutrient-wise?
Yes. So lettuce might not be the thing you'd want to cook, but if for whatever reason you want to, that's fine. But when you look at things like cooked kale or collard greens or broccoli or that type of thing, there is some nutrient loss depending on the nutrients. So the water-soluble nutrients like vitamin C, for example, there's a little bit of nutrient loss from light steaming, but not a lot. There's still a lot of that left. The fat-soluble vitamins are retained a little bit more because water heats up faster than fat when you are cooking something. So, the carotenoids of vitamins A, D, or not A in plant foods, but carotenoids, vitamins D, E, and K, you get less loss from cooking. And the minerals, some of the minerals, depending on your cooking method, can leach out into the water, but you don't actually damage those minerals. So if you drink the water, you're still in good shape mineral wise. So bottom line is we're still big fans of steamed vegetables, and things like steaming also don't get the omega-3s hot enough to damage those. So you're not damaging the omega-3s by steaming kale or lettuce for that matter. So we're big fans of steamed vegetables. And, a point I'd like to mention about that, and here's my classic example, is broccoli. I've been eating raw fruits and vegetables as my diet for 35 years. I eat 3 or 4 pounds of raw vegetables per day. Having said that, I'm not a big fan of raw broccoli. It's just kind of chalky.
I don't like it. I don't like it either. It's yucky, actually.
Yeah, so I don't eat much, but steamed broccoli, oh my God, I love that. I could eat large quantities. So
agree.
To the extent that people can eat more steamed vegetables compared to raw vegetables, even though there's a pretty mild nutrient loss, let's say you lose 20% of the nutrition overall by steaming, but you can eat 2 or 3 times more steamed vegetables compared to raw vegetables, you've actually come out way ahead by steaming them. So those are my thoughts there. So if you want to steam lettuce, you lose a little nutrients, but steamed lettuce would still be what I would consider to be a nutrient powerhouse.
Yeah, I agree. The most important thing is to eat them, whether they're raw, steamed, blended. Just don't be putting butter and oil and cheese all over them.
Amen. Amen. We're on the same page there for sure.
Absolutely. Somebody said they heard that broccoli stems have cyanide. Is that true?
Oh gosh, I am not sure.
Well,
I'm not sure.
Then I probably have cyanide poisoning because I eat broccoli every day.
Yeah, so here's the deal. Sometimes people hear like, okay, there's one little thing that might be a question. Oh, you can't have it anymore. Any stone fruit, peaches, plums, nectarines, etc., they all have a little bit of cyanide in them. You don't want to eat the thing in the center of the pit that looks like an almond. They have pretty high levels of cyanide in there. You don't want to save your apple seeds and eat those. They have quite a bit of cyanide. And Dr. Karin talks about an example where some guy, saved apple seeds for a while and ate a cup of them and actually died. But at super trace levels, not a problem. So for example, the most common form of vitamin B12 is cyanocobalamin. Some people have used that as an argument that, vitamin B12 supplements are toxic. Well, there is methylcobalamin and other forms. But the point is, at extremely low levels like that, you just don't have to worry about it. And things like broccoli stems, I would still give an incredibly high, safe nutrient approval of.
Good. Thank you. Okay. Angela says, have you ever heard the wives' tale that placing lettuce on the forehead will ease a headache? And is there any truth to it? I never heard that.
I've never heard that either, so I really can't speak to that.
Well, it sounds like it's very non-invasive. If you wanted to try it, it probably
It
would.
sounds like a good first step. I'd sure try that before aspirin or Tylenol or something that's going to, damage your gastrointestinal system or your liver, respectively.
Absolutely. Tammy says, I've been diagnosed with low thyroid and sleep apnea this year. I'm struggling with being able to stay awake during the workday. Do you find that this diet will help with apnea and thyroid issues?
Oh boy, so it's really tough to say, just based on very limited information. So one thing about apnea is, this is just the super basic. So I remember when I was at True North, there was a number of people with sleep apnea, and they'd have their CPAP machines to keep their airways open so they could breathe at night. A lot of that has to do with extra body fat. So all else being equal, less extra body fat tends to translate into less likelihood of still having sleep apnea. So to that slice of the pie, and I don't know exactly if it's all 360 or if it's just 30 or 40 degrees of the pie, but to that degree, eating this way helps you lose extra body fat, and that may help with sleep apnea. So there's that to consider. Now, thyroid issues, that's a whole big, long topic. We don't have time to get into all of that now, but for hypothyroidism, which is most people's concern, it makes it harder to lose weight and all that. There are two primary causes of that. One is if you've got an autoimmune situation, they call that Hashimoto's, and it means something is triggering your immune system to attack different parts of the body. And if it attacks your thyroid, that can lead to hypothyroidism. Really good news is plant-based diets in general. There's a lot of research showing that they help with a variety of autoimmune diseases, RA, lupus, colitis, etc. Hashimoto's, I don't remember seeing a lot of Hashimoto people at True North, but I saw a lot of people recover from a lot of autoimmune diseases with water fasting. So if that's the reason for hypothyroidism, that could be helpful. The other major reason for hypothyroidism is not enough iodine in the diet. That's pretty simple to solve. A little bit of dulse or kelp, you got to have the right amount because you don't want to go overboard, or an iodine supplement, maybe to be the safest. And then there's the whole big issue is, are raw cruciferous vegetables bad for your thyroid? They do contain a fantastic group of phytonutrients known as isothiocyanates. Some of you have heard of the something called sulforaphane. That's the most well-known isothiocyanate. They're super beneficial, but they are thought to potentially block the uptake of iodine. So if your iodine status is really iffy and you consume large quantities of raw cruciferous vegetables, that may not be the best thing for your thyroid. But if you are in decent iodine status, which isn't hard to do either with some sea vegetables or a supplement, then it doesn't look like consuming raw cruciferous vegetables is a problem. But if you are concerned, you can just steam your cauliflower or broccoli or cabbage or whatever, and then you don't form those substances that might block the uptake of iodine, and you can stay safer that way.
Great, thanks. Oh, I got to thank Sherry Likes Fruit. We've had a lot of raw folks today. She gives me a super chat donation. I'm going to just do 100% raw 100% of the time. Just kidding, but it's very fun. Thank you, Sherry. So, I saw a question here, but where did it go? Give me a sec. Here it is. This is from Apple. Is it safe to eat sprouted raw whole grains such as spelt and rye berries or oat groats?
I think so. I haven't looked into this. This is again more Dr. Karen's looked into this topic more than I have. It's been a while, but I have consumed over the years plenty of sprouted wheat, sprouted rye. I used to take right before, gluten was the worst thing in the world, I would take some rye berries and mix them with some carrots, celery, and corn sometimes and grind them up and put them in the dehydrator and make them into crackers. We've got a raw pizza crust that we haven't made in a while, but it's sprouted buckwheat and sprouted rye, a little bit of flax in there to keep it from getting too hard when you dehydrate it. So I've consumed plenty of those things personally and have never had an issue. But there are concerns with some types of sprouts where they should not be eaten raw. So soybean sprouts, for example, kidney bean sprouts, for example, can be extremely toxic when they're sprouted and eaten raw. If you sprout them and then cook them, they are safer. But those grains you mentioned all sound pretty safe, but don't just indiscriminately consume any sprouts without being absolutely sure they're going to be safe, because we don't want anyone decreasing their health while they're trying to improve their health instead.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a question about raw apricot seeds. I heard they're good for cancer prevention, asks Linda. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, so I've heard of that. They contain a substance called laetrile. It's also known as vitamin B17. I have heard that too. I can't really speak to that, but there's also a lot of cyanide, as I mentioned earlier, in those stone fruit seeds. So you have to be careful. But that is really out of my area of expertise. I'm not an oncologist, and I just don't really have any experience in that area. So would not want to. But going back to the cyanide point, as long as you brought up apricot seeds. So one of the things we look at in our course is some of the longest lived historic populations in the world. One of them are the Hunzas. A lot of you have heard of them. Apricot seed oil is a staple in their diet. So that means they're getting quite a bit of cyanide from that, but they seem to do just fine with it. And they have a high, or did. The people who live there now are eating much differently, more modern, but in the traditional, time periods, that they had a very high amount of people who were centenarians. So in that context, with that profile, that extra cyanide didn't seem to be a big detriment to them.
Okay, thank you. There's a question. Do you have any advice or information on vertigo or Meniere's disease?
I really haven't had much experience with that. Sometimes there can be a mechanical component. So when I was in chiropractic practice, I would deal with sometimes people who were dizzy after a car accident, for example. And so their neck would get messed up, and then the upper two bones in your neck being lined up properly. So all the information about something called proprioception, that has to do with your body's, your brain's understanding of position, where your body parts are in space. So for example, when you're drunk, that doesn't work well. That's why you can't put your finger to the end of your nose when your eyes are closed when you're drunk, but you can do it normally. So if those are off, your brain's not getting all the information, and that can lead to dizziness. So chiropractic can help. As far as nutritional considerations of that, I'm really not familiar with that. So I apologize for not.
That's okay.
Like you said, Chef AJ, we know a lot about a lot, but not everything about everything. So.
Sherry says that the raw vegan diet cured her sleep apnea. And Rachel says, is vegan insomnia a real problem, meaning less than 5 hours sleep a day? I never heard of vegan insomnia.
I never have either. To quote our mutual friend, Dr. Goldhammer, he says, when you can awake spontaneously feeling refreshed, that's a pretty good indicator that you've gotten enough sleep. And I have heard of plenty of people, my wife included, who started her interest in a plant-based and a raw food diet because she was chronically fatigued as a college student. She was sleeping, ridiculous amounts of time, 14, 15 hours a night, and still feeling tired. She started sleeping a lot less when she initially went to a vegan diet, but then the real dramatic thing for her was when she went a lot more raw. She needed a lot less sleep and felt a lot better. I haven't heard it happening the other way around. Although I do know this, like if I do a juice fast for a while, for those first few days, and I'm kind of hungry at night and I haven't gotten used to it yet, it's tougher to fall asleep if you're hungry. And sometimes people don't realize that X amount of conventional food might have 1,000 calories, but that same amount of fruit and vegetable based food, especially vegetables, might have only 300 calories. If you haven't gotten used to consuming a larger volume of food to get more calories, you might still be hungry. And I suppose that could contribute to not being able to fall asleep well if you're hungry. But other than that, I haven't actually heard of vegan insomnia.
Yeah, me neither. Let's see. Here's a question from Lisa. How do you feel about healthy fats with fruit? For example, flax in smoothies, nuts with fruit salad, like that? The raw desserts are always like dates and nuts. It's always fruit with fat, isn't it? Sugar and fat.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. The question was, how do I feel about like those types of healthy fats?
Yeah, but how do you feel about healthy fats with fruit? So like, some people put like a half a cup of flax seeds in their smoothies or nuts in their fruit salad. Is that?
Yeah, got it. So here's where Chef AJ and I, on the one hand, are on the same page, and on one hand, differ a little bit. So our personal diets are a little different. Chef AJ keeps her fat percentage calories, 7-8% or something like that, just from the fruits and veggies, maybe a little chia. You saw, for example, in the salad dressing there, we included some chia and some walnut. And a typical day for me, I might be in the upper teens or lower 20s percentage of calories from fat. If I were eating more starches, I would eat less fat because I'd be getting more concentrated calories from the starches. So, no matter wherever you are in that mix, if you're basing on fruits and vegetables, you have a little fat for extra calories, healthy fat, or you have a few more starches for the extra calories. I think that's all, they're different versions of an excellent diet, in my opinion. But when you start to really get into the gourmet stuff and 40-50% of your calories start coming from fat, that's probably still better than 40 and 50% of your calories coming from fat from pork and French fries and potato chips and those types of things. But I still think you're eating a more dense diet than would be ideal. Now, when you mix a lot of fat with fruit, well, on the one hand, you could make the argument that at that meal, you are lowering the glycemic index of that meal because you're adding some fat in there to kind of block the uptake of the glucose going in as quickly. But even with healthy fat, too much fat over too long can start to contribute to insulin resistance, which means then your body doesn't regulate blood sugar well, and consuming things like sweet fruit doesn't work as well. So I think if you do that a little bit, that's reasonable, but I just wouldn't go overboard with a bunch of high fat, high dried fruit or gourmet things. Maybe occasionally if you do that, but have a big salad first, and you'll buffer some of the negative effects. As far as things like a half a cup of flax seeds in a smoothie, that to me, this is just me personally, seems excessive. Now, I know there are programs out there where it's recommended to have that much flax in your smoothie when people are initially overcoming an autoimmune disease. And it's true that omega-3 fats help to decrease inflammation. And that's really important. So when somebody is starting out and they just want some symptomatic relief from their joint pain, if it's RA or from, whatever else it might be, that is sort of what I would call a kind of a pharmacologic use of omega-3 fats. You're trying to use it instead of aspirin or something to reduce inflammation. But then to really resolve the problem, you've got to figure out what is triggering your immune system to respond and attack something else in the first place. And once you do that, then you don't need large quantities of omega-3s to offset the inflammation because it's not getting created in the first place. So the point is there, I can see the value of that initially in certain circumstances, but in my opinion, even though it's really healthy fat, that is just too much fat to be adding to your diet if you really want to feel the most light and the most clear and as healthy as possible.
Thank you. So Rosie wants to know if you recommend vitamin K supplements, and if so, which ones do you recommend?
So we don't usually, because like I said earlier, the evidence seems reasonably good enough that with a healthy microbiome and enough vitamin K1 intake from leafy greens, we probably make enough K2. But for example, with our little guy who's 1.5, Dr. Karin, mom, got him a vitamin D supplement that also has some K2 in it. And we figured just in case we're wrong, we don't want to make a mistake and have him, not grow and develop properly and not have good bone strength and all that kind of stuff. And when it comes to babies and kids, it's not the time to experiment. My thinking is always get more conservative and make sure you cover your bases. So those are my thoughts there.
That makes sense. One of the viewers says this, let's see, hold on. Where did it go? I'm sorry, because my chat goes very quickly, unlike yours. Somebody saying their functional doctor recommended they take vegan omega-3 oil from kelp.
Yeah, so here's the good news. Like with now, Chef AJ, do you still have your past summits for sale? People can watch.
Oh gosh, Toby, I don't think he puts them up. I know it.
Right, you sell them at the time, but then it's been a few years.
I wish that he would just let me put everything on YouTube, because that's what I'd love to be able to do.
Yeah,
but
if you go to our website, I have a few webinars where we talk about omega-3s in there. And the good news is, for most people, if you're consuming enough leafy greens and maybe adding some chia flax, hemp walnut, you're getting enough alpha-linolenic acid. That's the omega-3 essential fat. And in most people, and you can test this for yourself, Chef AJ's done that, and we analyzed her whole fatty acid profile. You can see if your body is making enough EPA and DHA. Those are the longer chain omega-3 fats found in things like fish oil and algae oil. I haven't actually heard of an omega-3 supplement from kelp oil, but so anyway, you can test to see if you have enough of those things, to see if you need an outside source of EPA or DHA, or if your body is making enough. I know my body makes enough. We know Chef AJ's body makes enough. Chef AJ, I'll bring up our mutual friends, Robbie and Cyrus of Mastering Diabetes.
His is even better than mine, and he's wow, it's incredible, Robbie's.
Yeah.
Profile.
They had me do the same thing. I think you might have gotten the idea because they asked me on their summit, hey, Dr. Rick, here's my fatty acid profile. Let's go over it and make sense. We know their bodies make enough EPA and DHA from ALA, alpha-linolenic acid, from leafy greens. So Dr. Karin, she doesn't convert quite enough. She's half Swedish, and it may be, this is hypothesizing, but it may be that all of her ancestors historically in Sweden ate lots of cold water fish that's loaded with EPA and DHA. If any of those people could not convert the plant omega-3 into EPA and DHA, there was no disadvantage. They always had an outside source. So that's our hypothesis as to why, based on testing, she doesn't convert quite as well as I do. So I actually have her take a DHA supplement. It's from algae oil. It's not from fish oil. It's from algae oil. And especially when she was pregnant and breastfeeding, I increased her level. But we tested her breast milk. It was, it got all nerdy and clinical about it. So I can't speak to what a functional medicine doctor does. I'm a little biased because they have a tendency to test a lot and supplement a lot. They make money on the test, they make money on the supplements. That's kind of their bread and butter. I think they tend to recommend more supplements in general than people need. But anyway, I'm not against, not so much kelp. I'm not sure why, but again, algae oil for omega-3s is fine when warranted, but I don't think everybody needs it. And I'm sure everyone doesn't need it because I've tested lots of people, and most people don't, which is great. Most people who eat a healthy plant-based diet don't. Most people in the regular world don't convert well because they're eating too many omega-6s from processed foods and too many fats in general, and that interferes with omega-3 conversion.
Okay, thanks. Someone says, I took vitamin K2, MK7, then I felt chest pain like heartaches, and it lasted around an hour. Please answer for me.
I have no idea. Again, I'm sorry, Dr. Karin isn't here for this. She is she can tell you the difference between menaquinone 4 and menaquinone 7, abbreviated MK, like they say, and what the effects are. I haven't actually heard of that before, so I cannot speak to that. I apologize.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, this is great. Let's see. You want to tell us what you eat in a day? People love to hear that over and over. Every guest gets that question.
Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't prepared, but yeah, a typical day for me is fruit and some greens during the day. Sometimes I'll just sit down and eat 6 or 8 oranges, sometimes with some lettuce, sometimes just eat the oranges. I always okay, and let's see. And then sometimes, okay, it's usually 2 fruit meals and a vegetable meal with a little bit of fat. Sometimes, depending on the schedule, it's a fruit meal, big salad, and then more fruit later. Sometimes it's both fruit meals during the day and then the salad later on. Sometimes the fruit and greens are in the form of a smoothie. A typical smoothie for me would be a couple of oranges. I just peel the oranges and put them in. A couple of bananas. In the fall, we buy some pomegranates and press out the pomegranate juice and add that to the smoothies. It's really fun and, good tasting and adds a lot of antioxidants in there. So a couple oranges, couple bananas, a couple of kale leaves, depending on how big the kale is. So I'll throw that in there so it's nice and green. And then I usually add some frozen fruit, which is typically mangoes and some berries. And it makes a big thing, like 40 ounces, and I'll drink that. And then a typical salad is a lot of food. So in my particular case, I love raw cauliflower. So I'll typically eat a head of raw cauliflower kind of as a pre-dinner, and a typical head weighs close to a pound. Then for the salad itself, there's a close to a pound of romaine lettuce. There's about a pound of shredded zucchini in there. So, I mean, it's a lot. It takes a while to eat it. A lot of fiber, a lot of nutrients in there. And then we'll make a dressing that is a bit more calorie dense to kind of complement the large quantity of low calorie density vegetables that we have there. A typical dressing is what I shared in the makeover diet there. It would be lemon juice and celery and sometimes some onion as the base. And then we'll add some chia and walnut to thicken it up. And we'll pour that over the giant salad. Another common dressing we'll make is a tomato-based dressing where we'll put some fresh tomatoes in, blend those up first, and then we'll put some sun-dried tomatoes in and a date or two. We don't really eat that much dried fruit, but when you dry tomatoes, they can get a little bitter. So we add the date in there to add a little bit of sweetness to offset the bitterness. We'll blend that up. Sometimes we put some onion in that also for some extra flavor. And then we'll also add some chia and walnut in there to thicken it up and make it a bit more calorie dense. So the salad, so we're not hungry an hour later, it'll last us a few hours. And then typically, usually later in the evening, I'll have a little kind of fruit snack, a few oranges, a few apples, a banana or two before bed. So I don't experience vegan, what was it before? Vegan sleep?
Vegan insomnia.
Yeah, because again, if I'm too hungry, it's hard to get to bed. So if I have a little bit of food, then I feel I can kind of relax and get to sleep. But I try not to go overboard with that because let's say I ate 6 or 8 oranges right before bed. I got to get up a couple times to urinate. So I try to get the right balance. So it's a fair amount of fruit. It's about the cauliflower, the lettuce, and the zucchini are each a pound or so. So that's 3 pounds of vegetables there. And there's almost another pound of vegetables in the celery or tomato as the dressing. So it's about 4 pounds of vegetables a day, a few nuts or seeds, probably about 6 pounds of fruit. And the percentage of calories from fat is in the upper teens to lower 20s. And that's a pretty typical day for me. And I've been at that for 30 something years at this point. For the last 3 years, I've eaten just raw. I'm actually doing some experimenting with microbiome and beta carotene and whatnot. And I'm going to then add some steamed vegetables back into my diet and then see some of the follow-ups. But when I'm not all raw, I'm usually about 90% raw. So some steamed vegetables and some quinoa and potatoes and some of those other things make their way in a little bit here and there as well.
Nice. Thank you. Well,
Sure.
one of the viewers said that you save them hundreds of dollars from what the functional medicine doc suggested to do and take. They meant omega oil, not kelp oil, but they thank you for answering that. One of the viewers said when they eat roots, their blood sugar goes up. So I asked them if they were diabetic, and they said yes. And that would make sense. If you eat starch, your blood sugar will go up, even if you're not diabetic, is my understanding, right?
Yeah, so they should watch some episodes where you've had Robbie and or Cyrus
But
on
I
there
said
to cover
mastering
that.
diabetes because they're both diabetic and they eat starch and they eat fruit, but you can't just necessarily jump right into it. Yeah, that's exactly who I would recommend.
Right. And the bottom line there is the great news there is that when you're insulin resistant, starches and fruit, they do make your blood sugar go up more quickly. But the great news is those starches and those fruits do not have the excess fat and the type of profile of fat that contributes to insulin resistance. So when you eat that way, initially your blood sugar goes up a bit. We recommend people eat lots and lots of vegetables initially. Then the great thing is the magic starts to happen. Your insulin resistance decreases. Your cells become more sensitive to insulin. Then you can start to add some starches back in your diet and you won't see that big increase in blood sugar. And then you've got more flexibility in your diet. But initially, the banana made my blood sugar go up. The starches made the blood sugar go up. It's not the starches or the banana themselves that are the problem. They're combined with someone who is insulin resistant eating them. And that doesn't work so well. But again, the insulin resistance can change in a relatively short period of time. Then you have more flexibility. And then you don't have to just avoid carbohydrate rich foods that are high in fiber and nutrients and low in calorie density for the rest of your life. It's just temporary situation. Then you have a lot more flexibility. So good luck. And there's great books out there by various guests. You've had Dr. Barnard, Dr. Furman. I have books on that. Mastering Diabetes. They have a book called Mastering Diabetes. Lots of excellent resources out there to
probably
help
the
reverse
most
that.
misunderstood thing in plant-based diets.
So true. And water-only fasting is extraordinarily helpful for that.
Yep.
Don't do it at home on your own, especially with diabetes and especially if you're on medication. But if you go to a place like True North, I have just seen person after person turn around their type 2 diabetes. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, do you have any final thoughts before we give the take-home message?
Oh, the take-home message. Well, yeah, my final thought is, first of all, Chef AJ, just thank you. This was a lot of fun. We got some extra credit time in here with all the questions. I really, really enjoyed this. So thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and I'll send that out into the future. Always will be in the future. So what did we see here?
Especially because we got off to a rocky start, because I got a big mouth.
There was that thing. So yeah, should we tell that 30-second story?
I think I'm getting better as I get older, actually. I just, because, it's partly, and this isn't an excuse, people don't know that I have a whole nother life, that my dream is really to be an improvisational comedy actor. And I spend almost every night going to school for comedy, stand-up. And that's like really what I want to do.
Oh,
and
wow.
So because of the training of being quick, just because you have a thought doesn't mean you have to say it out your mouth. And I'm learning that. That's why I always got in trouble in school. But anyway, thank you for being so kind after
Well, of course. So Chef AJ, you used to put together like a holiday program at True North.
Yeah,
when fasting patients weren't coming in. So, okay, didn't know it was that long.
Yeah, it was from 2011 to 2018, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 8 years he had me do it.
All right. So it might have been 2011 or 12 or somewhere around there. I was asked to be a guest speaker and I talked about omega-3s. I gave Dr. Goldhammer a few options. I didn't know you actually put the program together. So anyway, came to give the presentation. You were there, we met, and you said to me, yeah, all raw foodists are nuts. I'm like, oh, really? I'm like, God, I'm pretty rational. But anyway, so that.
They like nuts. I don't know why I said that. I'm an idiot. I'm sorry, because
no, you're not.
They're the most wonderful people, at least the ones I'm meeting, like you and Lissa and Chris and, so I don't know why I said that. And I was raw myself. I must Anyway, I'm embarrassed.
Well, so
But that was so nice
that
of you to still talk to me, because I remember I contacted you because Robbie gave me your number and I wanted you on the summit. But see, I didn't remember saying that, but apparently you did. So we have to be careful of what goes out of this thing.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it and we brought it up and we totally made up and we've been friends
Yeah,
ever since.
I
So,
know.
no
But
trouble there.
I'll never live that one down. But
No,
anyway,
you've lived it down. You lived it down as soon as we talked about it.
that
So we've
shows
been good ever since.
how you're able to just look beyond a person's flaws and imperfections and move on. So
I got to give you credit, Chef AJ. There are raw
there
foodists
are
who
some,
I think are nuts.
and some
Okay,
regular
it's
vegans
just
too.
the word "all" is what threw me off.
I don't know why.
Some
I can't believe
are.
I said that. I'm like,
And
oh,
that's part of why I did the fruit only versus fruit and vegetable comparison. We're
Yeah.
not fruitarian fans.
Right.
We're not, I mean, some people just are like, they've got a really rigid, certain way of looking at things, and then their health isn't optimal, but they just can't see past the rigidness. And then they make the rest of the community look bad. And sometimes they're just difficult to deal with. So anyway, some raw foodists are nuts, but a lot of the ones you mentioned, we're just trying to make sense out of things and do things well. We're not making people wrong for eating steamed vegetables or starches. We're all getting along. And just like we said before, you and I, for example, as a perfect example, base our diet on fruits and vegetables. You can't get all of your calories doing that unless you're eating lots of bananas and dried fruit. It's tough to do. So you get some extra calorie density from starches. I eat a little bit more fat, but it's healthy fat. And hey, we can notice we're a little different, but there's more commonalities and everyone can still get along. So,
and actually, I have more in common with the raw food people than probably with regular vegans, because they eat a low fat diet, whereas like most vegans are eating a high fat diet.
Yeah. And none of us are eating a lot of processed food,
Right.
which is great. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Apple
So that's
says,
good.
I like how Dr. Dina reassesses his perspective when new science is presented.
Well, we try. Yeah. We want to make sense out of this. We're not just like, there's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Apple. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, Apple, she has a raw name.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, people could bake apples, but we'll assume it's raw apples and maybe some cider and stuff like that that's unpasteurized. That sounds great.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dina. If you want to buy the bundle from Dr. Dina, I put the link in many, many times during this show. It's also in the show notes. I'll do it one more time because, guys, in about 48 hours, the bundle is over and you'll be very sad that you didn't get this. So just a take-home message of what we discussed today, everyone. Right here.
Eat your damn veggies because they rule. They will help you be as healthy as possible. And yeah, no matter how you slice it, get those veggies in there. And if you ever do eat something imperfect, get the veggies in there first. You talked about sequencing before, Chef AJ. Let's say you're going to eat some raw dessert with lots of nuts and dried fruit in there. Eat a big salad first, so you're mostly full from the salad. Then you'll enjoy your gourmet thing, but you won't eat that much of it because you'll fill up quickly. And so they're the great buffers in things.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rick. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back in about 10 minutes for my final show of the day.